Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the I49 podcast. I'm Mo Riley. I am blessed to have my brother who is right next to me. He has been a Marine friend of mine for over 30 years. We go back, not quite to baby seats, but close enough. We went from boys to men together. I'd like to introduce you. He's from Never Ran, Never Will, New York City. My brother and good friend, Mr. Brooklyn Taylor. Brooklyn, what up?
What's up, King? Glad to be here as always. Great to see you. Welcome, people.
Great. Hey, welcome. Don't forget, this is a podcast, and you can find us on YouTube. So please, by all means, go ahead and like and subscribe to this podcast. If you get anything out of it, don't forget to leave a comment. If you got any questions, please, by all means, leave a comment or a question. We're willing to take it. Our goal is to grow this channel so that many people can be informed as much as possible. And we appreciate that. So, Brooklyn, what we talking about today, bruh?
Today's idiom is the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. Now,
Gotcha.
This phrase, this idiom, this proverb has been traced back to Zimbabwe.
Oh,
many years ago. The original, before it was translated into English, it was in a language called the Shona language. Basically, simply put, the axe forgets what the tree remembers speaks to someone that is harmed and it's someone or something that does the harming, right? So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever been lied to, if you've ever been stolen from, if you've ever been wronged, you know, that affected you personally, right? Let's take a car. If you've ever been out, you know, on the way to work in the morning, or leaving a mall, or out at a nightclub, and you come outside and your car is gone, you're gonna remember that. If that's happened to you once in your life, you remember that. But if someone's a car thief, they might not remember your car at all. If they've stolen 100 cars, your car was just a Tuesday night. So I think that's the main premise, the main gist of the axe forgets and the tree remembers. Because someone might be a serial killer, just a bad person, you know, and people do things sometimes serially. They do things and it's just another day for them, but their victims or the people that they've harmed, you can see this even among families, right? Someone says something to their child or their grandchild, and they literally might forget right afterward, but you're talking to their therapist and they remember what their grandfather said to them 50 years ago, and you know, he basically said it in passing, but that person can carry it, you know, for their whole lives. And there are a lot of things like that. And as I thought about today's topic, I thought about that and how, you know, it reminds me of one of the Jurassic Park movies where, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, and don't worry, Mo will insert it right here. But essentially, the scientist who on Jurassic Park is saying that, you know, someone was like, they're monsters. It's like, a monster is a matter of perspective, right? If you're a canary, a cat is a monster, right? And people are usually the monsters in real life. So it's just one of those things wherein you could be the monster of the story. You could be someone who has harmed someone, and then you went about your life and you don't really realize how you hurt someone's feelings with your words or your actions, how, maybe you broke someone's heart, maybe you did something to your own family, and you may be the axe. So I think that we should all be mindful of the times that we were the axe, and have empathy, because if you know better, you can do better. What do you think?
Absolutely. I find this particular idiom very interesting from the perspective of there's a lot of symbolism within this idiom. For instance, like you've alluded to already, that the axe symbolizes the person or the system that does the harm, but the tree represents the individual or the community that suffered the harm. And what happens is, when you look at it from the perspective of being the axe is usually the person that hurts the feelings. The axe is usually the one that takes away. The tree has to go on living, and believe it or not, if the axe cuts the tree down, now the tree has to begin to grow again with the trauma that has already been presented, which is the cutting down of. So think about it, a tree that's 300 years old. That's 300 years of history. That's 300 years of lessons. That's 300 years of pain. That's 300 years of triumph. And then in a moment, a person, or in this case, the axe, can come along and cut that down. And this person is forced to start all over again.
Right.
And I find that to be a great symbol or a lesson for all of us. To me, it really forces a person to analyze their interactions with other human beings and ask yourself, in this instance, am I the axe or am I being the tree? Because there's no way you can be both at the same time. You may feel like it, but you're either the one hurling the insult or hurting someone's feelings, or maybe you're doing it in a reactionary kind of way, which means that someone says something harmful to you, so now you feel the need to inflict pain. So now, in the end of an argument or a disagreement, we could literally have two trees that are totally cut down and are forced to begin all over. So, this is always a great phrase for people to kind of keep in the back of their minds as they interact with their family, especially with family and friends. Now, total strangers, I'll leave that choice up to you. But I think it would be in the best interest of everyone if we tried not to be the tree and try to be more collaborative with other people, try to be more cooperative, and try to have conversations that are going to, in fact, help the both of us. Now, Brooklyn, with that in mind, how would one consciously go about making sure or ensuring that they're not the axe themselves?
Well, a couple things, right? Stoicism. I've been studying Stoicism for the last few years, and I think it's been very helpful for me personally. And when you're being stoic, what you're really doing is being mindful and thinking before you speak and thinking before you act, and not letting your lower vibration self or your demons be in control of the machine, which is your mind, body, and soul. So when I think of trying your best not to be the axe, I think of taking a beat, right? It's something that I've always attempted to do. For instance, whenever you're dealing with another human being, I personally try never to say something or do something that I can't take back. Now, you will in relationships with friends, family, loved ones, romantic relationships, you will come across people who get upset and there are no holds barred. They'll hit you where it hurts. It takes effort to not return the favor, right? To not go ahead and be the axe when someone is attempting to chop you down, right? So to me, that's what's important. You find a way to focus, lock in, and think everything through. Because if you're reactive, you might say or do something mean or worse. But if you are, if you take time, if you do a little countdown, you'll calm yourself down and you're like, what's the best way to handle this? What's the best way not to inflict pain? Because if you're dealing with, you should approach everyone in the world with respect. And of course you should, and show love. But of course, with the people closest to you, sometimes we forget to handle things with love and handle things with care, because we're so comfortable, we're so used to people, and people do that to us. People know, yeah, hell, you can take it, right? Like, you're this big, strong Marine, of course you can take it. So what we do need to do, all of us, people within the sound of my voice, people on Earth and on other planets, what we should do is try our best not to be the axe. Because what the axe does, especially when you're using the metaphor of the tree, is what the axe does is permanent. Even if it doesn't cut down the tree, it definitely damages the tree. And so we have to do that, because if you cut the tree down and it's a stump, that's not growing back. Like, some things grow back, trees don't always grow back. So we need to be careful. And, sometimes, because you're the axe can leave a scar, or the axe can cut down the entire tree. But either way, the tree remembers, right? You don't have to destroy someone completely for them to remember what you did or what you said or how you harmed them or what you took from them. So that's how I feel that should be handled. What do you think about that?
You know what? You speaking about this reminded me of something. And it's something that we don't talk about a lot. One thing you said that was very important, I want people to make sure that I want to reiterate it. And that is that count. I remember when I was in therapy, and yes, Black men do go to therapy. And therapy is dope. My therapist used to always say, 3 seconds can save a lifetime. So, and what that always meant to me was that when you feel that rise in your spirit that has the need, or you're offended of something, it's always important to give yourselves the 3 seconds, or walk away, from the conversation totally and completely, depending on what level of disrespect you feel. What it really boils down to is communication. And that's something that culturally we really just don't talk about. We don't talk about communication. And one thing you learn about communication is that 80% of all communication is nonverbal. So right. Even though you may not be even saying something to somebody, your actions could in fact be inflicting a level of trauma. Now, it's not your responsibility to watch every step that you make, but you have to know and understand your patterns. You have to know and understand that if someone, what things trigger you. That's your responsibility. I'm a big sports fan, and a lot of times I do a lot of trash talking with people from other teams. And one thing about it is, we're always trying to hit below the belt when it comes to that other team. Right. Especially but me being a Michigan fan. Right. And, I will say whatever I can to hurt an Ohio State fans' feelings. And being a Lions fan, of course, our oldest rival is probably the Chicago Bears. So a Chicago Bears fan, I'm going to do everything I can to make them feel worse about their team. But even in that, I have to be mindful that I am not there to hurt their feelings as a human being or to demean them just because they're a Ohio State fan or they're a Chicago fan. And I have to always be aware that sometimes your demeanor says everything. Your demeanor in a conversation They always talk about, if your arms are crossed, that means that you may not be accepting, the information, or, stand in a certain way. People will read your body language as you're being indifferent. So it is our responsibility to be cognizant of the things that we do so that we don't stay in a constant state of being the acts. And believe it or not, you're going to come across people that are the acts and they don't even realize it because their behavior is everyday behavior, or their conversation is everyday conversation. So I implore everyone not to do it oftentimes when you're in the middle of the conversation. But one thing I like to tell people to do to get better at communicating is stand in front of a mirror and have a conversation. And watch how you move. Watch how you act. Watch the inflection in your voice. Because one thing, things can get misinterpreted and it can lead a person to go down that road of feeling some negative type of way. And like I said previously, it's not your responsibility to watch everything you do to ensure that nobody's offended. People are just going to be offended no matter what. Like the saying says, damned if you do and damned if you don't. But it is very important that we all take accountability for the things that we take accountability for, not only what we do, but who we are, in order to make the environment or the culture. Like me being a husband, I know that my wife is sensitive. She's as sensitive to me. Why? Because she cares about me. So I have to be very cognizant with my body language and the tone in which I speak and all of these things, so not to send her down a path of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll just call it indifference or hurt. I don't want to send her down the path to where we're having a conversation and now her ability to communicate, and one very big part of communication is listening, that she turns off the listening and she spends a lot of time reacting, and it's in everything we do. When you're around somebody every single day, you pick up their mannerisms, you watch everything you do. You know who knows you better than anybody? And I've learned this recently. If you have kids, your kids know you better than anybody. They know when you're mad. They know when you're triggered. They know everything. But if you want to have and remain in an environment where communication is edifying, you have to be cognizant of all of these different things. All right?
Yeah. From what I've read, for biological reasons and for reasons of survival, women and children, but women especially, are more sensitive to body language, and they feel things before, they feel things without you saying it, right? And that comes from, back in the day, the tribal times when women spend all this time around each other, and it was necessary to communicate in certain ways, and it was also necessary to read the communication, right? If you're not the biggest and strongest, then you're going to have to learn when you're in danger. You have to learn communication and how to understand what's going on, right? So your wife may pick up on, you're like, I'm not going to act mad, but the cues are there, right? So she can feel that you're mad. You're trying on purpose not to act mad. I don't want to start a fight, so I'm going to pretend not to be mad. But you cannot pretend better than she can detect. Once again, for the people in the back, you can't pretend better than she can detect, because it's millions of years in the making. What we have to do there is we have to be in control of ourselves, because something can happen without you even doing it on purpose. And as you alluded to, You can be the axe. You're not trying to be the axe. You're like, okay, I'm mad about something with work, something with my friends, something else. I'm mad about something, and I'm not even going to bring her day down by sharing that, right? But guess what? She just feels that you're mad. Not at who.
When you're being distant, or when you're being quiet,
and there,
or maybe you're sitting there going through things in your mind.
Memes about that is like, she's like, I wonder what he's going through. I wonder what he's thinking about. Is he thinking about another woman? And he's like, I changed those spark plugs and the car's still running rough. I wonder if I need to change, the spark plug wires. And it's that's what's going on in his head. Her head is a whole different thing. What did I do? Why is he acting like this? What's the problem? Is this the end of us? It's not the end of us. I'm really trying to figure out what's going on with one of the cars, right? So that issue can happen, both ways. You're not paying attention to the calendar. You don't know it's PMS time, or you don't know she argued with her sisters or her mom or whoever, right? Like, you don't know. And so you're like, this energy is off, but that's what the communication's for. And we've all been through situations like that where, because two different people can have a bad day at the same time. But what you have to keep your antenna up for is, look, I'm having a bad day, and it's likely caused by an outside source, work, school, whatever. Right. So my job is to make sure that I don't pour that out on the people I love most in the world, because that happens. Like, you don't want to argue, fight, or hurt. You don't want to be the axe to the people you love most in the world. 8 billion people in the world, and you're the axe to the people you love the most. We've got to avoid that like the plague.
Imagine a world everyone was conscious of that particular thing, making sure that we're not the axe to a total perfect stranger. We used to always say that courtesy is free. It requires no money, so you won't go broke giving it up. You know what I mean? So absolutely. Keep that in mind also. This particular phrase has always been, I think you're the first person that brought it to my attention. And a lot of times we use this in social justice movements. Being that you and I are Black, everyone knows the history of America and what happened to Black people, not only here in America, but in the Caribbean and throughout the diaspora. I can't say it as a diaspora, and it wasn't all, and nobody brought us there with welcome arms and offered us cake when we got there either. No. So one great aspect about that is, well, I won't say it's a great aspect, but one thing I can say that came from it, and I always tell people this, there's nothing wrong with forgiving. You just cannot forget. Yes, you're the tree today. That doesn't give you a right to be an axe tomorrow. And because things that have happened to us doesn't necessarily mean that we have every right, or we've been granted allowance to be crude and be terrible people to other people, because we've got to learn to hold ourselves accountable for all of our actions. And I think far too many of us, we run away from that level of accountability. We're expecting everything to be accountable to us, not realizing that we ourselves have a level of responsibility for the world that we are in to this day. I just had a good friend, Cam of mine, tell me that you're the one that's responsible for the world that you live in. So begin to own your world. And one thing I think, this phrase is always going to remain at the front of my mind, because this is my world. This is your world. This is our world. And we get to decide how good it's going to be. And we get to decide on if it's going to be a world of turmoil or is it going to be a world of peace. And it's not always the responsibility of those we deem or we give that responsibility to in government. We always say that it's not the president's responsibility to make sure that you have, it's your responsibility to make sure that you have,
Absolutely.
But you can not only you can't just vote for just the president, you got to vote for your police
Right.
chief because maybe his views will align with yours. But anyway, that's getting off the beaten path. But I want to flip this whole thing really quick, and I want to get your thoughts about it because I thought about it recently as we were talking about this. And that is, if you're a person and you feel that you're always the tree and you're never the axe, maybe you need to take a good look at yourself and analyze your actions, because there's no way in the world you can always be the victim and never be the perpetrator. It wasn't set up that world. God created, if you believe in God or the creator or whomever you decide, we created balance throughout this universe. So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, you know? Sure. So sometimes people treat you a certain way. Maybe it was something that you gave off previously. Maybe it was something I did yesterday. Now, it's not my responsibility to make amends for that if a person hasn't communicated that to me, but I can act today on that.
That makes sense. Anytime someone is always slighted in every interaction and in every, some people are just really good people, right? So there are some people who are really good and others try to take advantage of them.
And some people are just offended at everything everybody does. And they stay in a constant state of self-pity.
Right. Those are extremes. There are definitely people who find a way to make it everyone else's fault. But generally, here's the thing. We're Marines, and a lot of the times our strength is in our control. We talked about this in the previous podcast. Better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener stuck in a war, right? So as Marines, there's the sheepdog theory, right? The sheepdog, every farm has a sheepdog who's literally capable of fighting off coyotes, fighting off wolves, usually completely by himself. And when he's not doing that, sheep are cuddling up to him, cows are cuddling up to him, pigs are cuddling up to him. He's gentle with anybody who he's supposed to protect, but he's also completely capable of going toe-to-toe with wolves or coyotes. That's what it takes. We all can be the axe, but our job is not to be the axe. Maybe sometimes it's necessary to be the axe. If your loved ones, a child in your family, a teenager in your family, a woman in your family, if someone's trying to attack, this is not a time for gentleness, right? I saw a video last night of some guy. He stole these people's child. It was like a child walking with his parents, and he grabbed the child and ran, and the parents ran after him. Yeah, and it's just like, so there's now you catch that guy, and they did catch him. You didn't sign up for a tickle fight. You grabbed my kid. You know what I'm saying? And you tried to run off. So that's a whole other thing. Like, you're gonna get the axe today, and you're gonna remember that. And so that's what it is. But generally speaking, this idiom is about innocent people being harmed by a situation or by a person, and whether the axe is evil or not. If you're going out and you're stealing people's cars, if you're going out and you're mugging people or robbing people or you're poisoning the drinking water in a city, or whatever you're doing, if you're doing stuff like a cartoon villain, you're doing it on purpose. You're being the axe on purpose. But sometimes you are the axe quite by accident, and it still hurts. And I think that's why people have to get their own mental health together. There are people who literally can't stomach the rejection of someone they're interested in, And that's in big and small ways. Sometimes it's silent, a breakup, or somebody's meeting someone and the other person is not romantically interested and people get upset or get hurt. Well, that person is not trying to be an axe. He or she just isn't interested in being romantic with you. But the fact that that's true sometimes doesn't stop the person from being hurt and feeling like, the axe. And that's when you see people are stalkers and all kind of wild things happen. So the axe is not always an axe on purpose.
So an axe sometimes can be a shield, huh? It can protect when necessary.
Yes. The axe,
similar to the sheepdog.
I'm not saying the axe is not always. The axe is sometimes necessary because you have to defend yourself and the people you love, right? Violence is, like, people say, like, violence is never the answer. It's totally the answer sometimes.
Definitely.
It's totally the answer. And if you're incapable of defending yourself, then that doesn't make you good. It just makes you harmless. Harmless isn't good. If you cannot defend yourself, if you cannot defend the people you love, then you are simply harmless. Like, rabbits don't have a lot of armament to go against wolves. They run around in a circle and they come back and then they're lunch. So we shouldn't go around trying to hurt people, but we also shouldn't go around being rabbits who completely cannot do anything if others try to harm us. And we're adults. Sure, that's why children need protection, right? Because a child cannot defend themselves. The child was helpless, for instance, when that adult grabbed them. This kid is like 7 or 8. The kid, there was nothing he could do, but he could try to fight it, but an adult grabbed him and ran off with him. So that's the thing. You have to be the axe for others. It's an interesting thought exercise.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take this moment to continue to exercise, your thoughts with some questions that I want people to ponder in their alone time, if you get the opportunity. Can you think of a situation where you the axe or the tree? Why do some wounds take longer to heal than others? How can we ensure that both the axe and the tree are part of healing and reconciliation? And last thought was, what steps can be taken after the harm to begin the process of restoration? So when you're not looking at this podcast and you're looking at something else, or go into that quiet time or that time where you could be being introspective rather than checking out what the latest famous person said on your phone, ask yourself these questions. And
take some accountability.
Take some freaking accountability. Do you realize that you can be rich? Most people could be rich if they take more accountability. You could be in such a better emotional state if you took more accountability. You could literally be whatever you want if you put it all on yourself and exercise being the best version of yourself. Or as if you've seen my beginning podcast, the highest version of yourself that you can actually be. And you know what? Granted, it's good to read books, but you don't need a map or a book to tell you how to be nice to people. And you don't need a map or a book to have the ability to respect yourself enough to ensure that you're not being disrespected either. Brooklyn, if you don't mind, sir, give us a summary and your final words today.
My final word is this. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. we all have to remember that, because we've all been the axe more times than we'd like to admit. And we also have been the tree more times than we'd like to admit. And so you're going to ask yourself, how can I take accountability for this? How can I, because there are times, I've known people to get, attacked out of the blue, or some really bad stuff happens. You cannot account for some of the horrible things that happen in life. Even if you are prepared, horrible things will blindside you. However, there are other times when it's like Austin Powers, Austin Powers driving like a steamroller, and someone is like, oh no, and it's like, dude, you had a year to get out of the way of that steamroller or that cart or whatever he was driving. You had more than enough red flags, warning signs, time. Like, people were telling you, get out of the way. People were telling you you're gonna crash. People were telling you, don't do it, Ed.
Shout out to Shadow.
Shout out to Ed the Shadow. But so accountability is important, because you have to know the times when you stood there and begged the axe to hit you. And that's not everybody, that's not all the time, but we have to take accountability for ourselves. And as my twin Jody, shout out to Jody, as my twin says, you're not a tree, you can move, right? You can move out of your situation, you can move out of your state, you can move out. Obviously life is expensive, and so you can't always move out of your state, but you can move out of the way if something bad is coming and you can tell it's coming, because there's a worse outcome than you may expect. So the axe is guilty of harming trees across the world. However, we've got to do our part and making sure the axe doesn't chop our tree down without consent.
Absolutely. And in the words of the great American poet, Jody, you're not a tree, you can move. And Brooklyn and I, we're going to go ahead and move on out of this bad boy. Don't forget to like and to comment on the Eye for an Eye podcast. I am Mo Riley, aka Mr. Act Like It. To my side is Mr. Brooklyn Taylor. Never ran, never will. And we appreciate your time. We will see you next time, God willing, or as Jim Harbaugh and other people have said, if the creek don't rise. Y'all take care now. Eye for an eye.
Eye for an eye.